So I'm a little bit late to the Klon party. I did dip my toes in a little bit though when I got this EHX Soul Food, but I never really got into it. I've heard so many great sounds from other people using Klon pedals though that I thought I should really get a bit of a better quality clone of the original Klon pedal and spend some serious time with it to figure out what this circuit can actually do. So that's what I'm doing, and hopefully it will help you guys decide whether the Klon sound is for you or not as well, or at least whether these versions of that particular circuit are for you or not. I'm using the Boss OD-3 as a kind of benchmark comparison here just to provide a bit of context. The main focus is going to be a little bit more on the Centura and the Soul Food. So let's start with using them for a clean boost. It's worth knowing first of all that the OD-3 doesn't really go completely clean. Even with the drive all the way down, it always has a little bit of grit on it. The Centura and the Soul Food can both do this thing where they go absolutely clean. And it's a really nice sound. It's nice and neutral. They both don't colour the sound too much. They both have loads of volume. So they're good for this. They do sound a little bit different to each other in the mid-range, but they both sound great to me. So for low gain, the OD-3 still can't get as much range on these low drive settings compared to the Klon pedals. The OD-3, even on its lowest setting, still has a little bit more drive than the Klons on this setting. As you turn up the gain control on the Klon pedals, you do get this mid boost that starts to come in and it rolls off the top end a little bit. So I've turned up the treble on the Klon pedals just to compensate for that a little bit and even out the sound. The bass response is still really nice and strong. The main two differences that I can hear between the OD-3 and the Klons is that, first of all, the high end in the OD-3 is really nice and open, while the Klons kind of roll off any potentially harsh high end really well. They're a little less open and more rolled off. The other thing is that the mid frequencies in the Klons are a little bit lower down. It's almost like a low mid boost when you compare it to the OD-3, where that mid frequency emphasis is a little bit higher up. See if you can hear what I mean. On this mid-gain setting, I can really hear the mid frequencies in the Klon pedals now coming out even more as I turn up that gain control. It's got a slightly more reduced bass now as well. It's really mid-focused, especially when you compare it to the OD-3, which is much more even, I think, and kind of more natural and amp-like, at least when you play it through a clean amp. I'll play these through the amp set on the edge of breakup as well, because I think that's where the Klon pedals will probably work best, where they're being used to push an amp that's already on the edge of breakup into further overdrive. With high gain settings, it's a similar story. The Klons are all about mid frequencies. The Soul Food is a little bit more open in the high end, has quite different mids to the Centura. Kind of sounds like the Soul Food wants to be more of a distortion pedal to me when you're on those high gain settings. But anyway, when you compare them to the OD-3, the OD-3 just has loads more bass, sounds a lot more even in general when you're playing it through a clean amp. But again, I'll play it with the amp set to the edge of breakup, and what I suspect will happen is the Klons with the mid focus, it'll help focus that overdrive sound of the amp, where the OD-3 is much more likely to kind of have muddier bass frequencies and a potentially sort of shrill high end in that setup when you've got the amp set to the edge of breakup like that. But make up your own mind. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. that I've learned from doing this are that, first of all, there's a lot of range in the gain controls on these Klon type pedals when you compare them to your more everyday overdrive pedals like the OD-3, which have a bit more gain. And the Klons are definitely a better choice if you want an overdrive pedal to go from completely clean to just gradually introducing subtle amounts of overdrive. Another thing is that because of the mid boost that happens when you turn up that gain control on the Klon pedals, I'm more likely to recommend they be used in an amp setup where you've got the amp set to the edge of breakup. So you get that nice cascading sound of the overdrive from the amp mixing with the overdrive from the pedal. And it just really helps focus that sound. Whereas in comparison to something like the OD-3, you're more likely to get a slightly muddy low end and a potentially kind of harsh high end. Through a clean amp though, it's kind of the other way around. The mid focus of the Klons can sound a little bit boxy compared to the really nice sort of full frequency open sound of something like the OD-3. So for that reason, I'm just gonna kind of in my head categorize the Klon pedals as those sort of more mid-focused pedals like the Tube Screamer and the Boss SD1. Even though they have a quite a different sound, I'd be tempted to, you know, recommend that they be used for a similar purpose, that's all. When the gain control is lower on the Klons, then the situation changes a bit because it's a really nice open kind of natural sounding pedal, so it depends on where you have that gain control set as well. But just be aware, that's what I've found through doing these plain examples anyway. I've put some links to the pedals that I've used here down in the description. If you found this video useful, think about liking the video and maybe subscribing to the channel if you want to see more videos like this exploring guitar sounds.